Welcome, everyone, to the PFF Fantasy Podcast. I am your host, John Macri, fantasy analyst here at PFF. And joining me once again to preview the final week of the preseason, Kate, the great Magdziuk. Kate, you ready for some more preseason football talk?
I am, and I'm going to hope that we actually get to see a few more of the starters this week. That'd be pretty cool. We talked a lot last week about things we were watching for. Didn't get to see all of those come to fruition because of that insane variability that we see each and every preseason. So hopefully, these teams are going to get one last look at the starters, make sure there's nothing amiss before the start of the season. We'll get to see everything play out exactly as we've predicted here on today's show.
Yeah, it didn't work out where we saw a lot of what we went over last week, but these are the things we should expect in the preseason, right? And we're going to go over everything that we hope to see this week and kind of what we saw last week for the teams that did show us things. And yeah, we'll cover all bases basically and make sure that, people are ready to kind of tune into the games. If you tune into the start of a game and you don't see the starters out there, there's usually going to be another game on that we can flip to at this point this weekend. So yeah, I'm ready to talk more preseason, but definitely 100% ready to move on from the preseason and get to the regular season, where fantasy points finally start to matter and we get some real usage and we get the starters on much larger sample sizes, obviously. But since it's August, we make do with what we have, and we're okay to remain patient and hype up the Aiden O'Connells of the world because it is the preseason and, what else are we going to do?
Yeah, so, I think we're finally starting to get into our in-season form. But again, there have been some really interesting spots at the backup position for a lot of these teams, even if we're not getting to see the starters, which has been it's been a ride. And one of the biggest storylines, I feel like, just continues to be the Pittsburgh Steelers backup running back Jaylen Warren, which feels like a perfect segue into our first game, the Steelers versus the Falcons.
Yeah.
How are we feeling about this Jaylen Warren, Najee Harris backfield split?
I know this has been getting interesting for sure. Because we kind of saw it last week a little bit, right? We saw Najee, he dominated the snaps on a small sample size as much as you can, right? 5 offensive snaps to Jaylen Warren's 2, but Jaylen Warren did work in there, right? And he did have that big, 62-yard touchdown, I think it was, that got everybody all excited and, comparing Najee Harris's longest run in the NFL and everything like that, not being nearly as great. So there's obviously, the Jaylen Warren hype already this offseason, but like we kind of talked about, Najee Harris is still getting like a pretty clear lead in the touches for this backfield, which is the main thing that we're going to look for. Even if he's not maybe as efficient as Jaylen Warren is on his touches, it gives us an opportunity, to take advantage of Najee Harris's volume and potentially be, like you mentioned last week, a discount at where he's going in his ADP.
Yeah, I certainly understand the excitement for Jaylen Warren. Last year exceeded Najee Harris's missed forced tackle rate, yards per carry, yards after contact per attempt, like stuff rate across the board. Jaylen Warren was the quote unquote better running back. But again, these two have such different play styles. Jaylen Warren is definitely going to excel in a change of pace role because of his explosiveness. But which one of these guys would I rather see run between the tackles? It's Najee Harris. He's a tough runner. He's not afraid of contact. And I think the Steelers, again, time and time again, have, utilized this workhorse running back. Maybe we see that usage shift just a little bit, but I'm still not projecting anything that is going to be meaningful for fantasy managers on a week-to-week basis. Barring the opportunity that, or, the situation where Jaylen Warren breaks off another 62-yard touchdown. Like, You can't bake on those every day. I know he's good. I know he's talented. I know he's got some of that speed, but we cannot be projecting this man for a touchdown of that magnitude every time he touches the ball.
Yeah, no, that would be asking quite a bit from him. And yeah, maybe at the start of the season we see him more, and maybe it's a passing down role, or like you said, change of pace kind of thing. Where I do think he's worth drafting, but you're probably not starting him, right? You're drafting
Yeah.
him just in case kind of thing, and he is getting drafted. So you can take a shot on him to avoid any kind of waiver wire race or anything like that one, if the usage does change in favor of him, or if something happens to Najee Harris. But yeah, Najee Harris still the clear number one back. Warren will probably mix in there. I'm excited to see what that week one usage looks like once we get these, full games worth of sample size. But yeah, it's definitely still one to watch, at least this preseason, and maybe they show us a little bit more of it this week.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. We've heard a lot of the discourse coming out, from Matt Canada. The team has sort of recommitted to Najee Harris, like kind of shutting down this Jalen Warren narrative, which I think is a good thing. You wanna hype up your starting guy there, but across the board, it would take, I think, a very significant, very significant, full seasons worth of terrible play from Najee Harris before we see the team start to reconsider that. And I think again, maybe one of the more valuable handcuffs in the league, but not somebody I'm gonna be squeezing into my lineups.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think that's the right way to look at it. You could consider, Jalen Warren a sleeper, late round pick kind of thing. But yeah, you're not going to be trusting him weekly as long as Najee Harris is in the lineup, at least to start the year, unless we see that usage change, right? So all right, let's look at the Falcons here. We had actually gotten a pretty decent taste of the starters last week. We got Bijan versus Tyler Algier. We know Tyler Algier started the game, but Bijan Robinson ended up outsnapping him 12-5 with the starters. So that was promising to see for Bijan Robinson. But again, like we kind of touched on last week, Tyler Algier is still mixing in there a little bit, and handled some of the carries as well. So there's definitely chance that he continues to do so into the regular season and works into Bijan's workload a little bit here.
Yeah, I think, if we're, it's interesting having these two discussions back to back. But if we're looking at, which of these two running backs that we'd prefer to draft at this point in the season, for me, gotta be Tyler Algier, who I do think, like, let's say, he saw a 41.6% snap share with Bijan with the starters. The Falcons led the team in rushing last year, 559 rushing attempts. You know, even if he sees like 35% of those rushing attempts, let's say we get some other guys in the mix there, we could still be seeing like an interesting an interesting amount of work from him on, maybe they play the hot hand a little bit. I don't think Arthur Smith would be, averse to that. But I think in terms of like a valuable handcuff, Tyler Algier actually might be the most valuable one in the league. Like I would argue over Jalen Warren.
I actually agree. Yeah, I wrote up Tyler Algier this week he was in the sleepers. Jalen Warren was in there as well, but absolutely, I think Tyler Algier is worth taking over him for the same reason that you just said, right? Falcons, we know, are a run heavy team. They're probably still going to continue to be so, even if it's not leading the league like they did last year. They still have the best run blocking offensive line in the league as well. So there's just going to be more opportunity there for Tyler Algier, and we've already seen him be productive as a lead back as well. So if something were to happen to Bijan Robinson, we know that Tyler Algier can kind of step in and take the large majority of the carries as well. So yeah, I'm with you 100%. I think Tyler Algier is still a very interesting player to draft, and one that you can get pretty cheap.
Now, before we move on from this offense here, the Atlanta Falcons, we've got to talk about Kyle Pitts, who's the big unicorn in the room right now.
Yeah.
What are we doing with Kyle Pitts? Because has not seen as much work as we'd like. Hasn't seen as much like I think involvement as we've like just historically. And I feel like Arthur Smith is Arthur Smithing again.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think it's very possible that we continue to see that same kind of 73% offensive snap share, whatever it was last season. I think it could very well remain in line with that this season, just because of how Arthur Smith rotates these guys and utilizes them. And obviously, I wrote about it that this as well this week. Kyle Pitts being one of the more kind of high risk, high reward players in drafts this year, right? Because we know he has this elite talent. We know that he's essentially a wide receiver more than a tight end, right? We know that, so he offers like significant receiving upside more so than a lot of the tight ends. And if Desmond Ridder were to work out and be, a better quarterback than we expect to be, at least be better than Marcus Mariota last year, which shouldn't be too difficult. So there's all this upside with Kyle Pitts, but at the same time, there's that risk that he maybe doesn't get the involvement in the offense that we're hoping for, and that some of the other tight ends going within the same kind of range as him are getting and exceeding by quite a bit. So that's where the risk comes in with him. I still like him. I think he's one of the ones that's kind of worth the risk because the upside's so high, but I don't feel great about about him as tight end one on most weeks, only because there could be a much lower floor there.
There's a lot of, I think, potential for volatility, just given, I think, the different types of like personnel groupings this offense. I think overall their roster construction gives them a lot of potential versatility there. Kyle Pitts, McCole Pruitt, Jonnu Smith, like obviously these are, Kyle Pitts is the receiving tight end of those, but you want him to be that every single down guy. Played 9 out of 17 snaps with the starters. And you saw a lot of Pruitt, you saw a lot of Smith in that mix. Which, again, even despite this sort of like different roles that they play in this offense, part of the biggest key to producing fantasy points is being on the field. And that might be more volatile than we'd like for a guy like Kyle Pitts, who you are going to have to draft relatively early, as opposed to a Darren Waller, who just continues to climb up my draft board. Yeah. Who I trust is going to be on the field for a very significant point of snap shares when it comes to time on the field with Daniel Jones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree 100%. There's a lot of risk involved there with Kyle Pitts. And like you said, there's going to be those, boom weeks, but also a lot of bust weeks as well. So something to keep an eye on for sure. Before we go on to the rest of the games, I do want to give a quick shout out to our presenting sponsor, the good folks over at Fabric by Gerber Life. Fall is about the back to school and back to routine checklist. And the most important task on that list should be securing your family's financial future, starting with life insurance. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it quick, easy, and affordable to protect your family so you can get back to enjoying life. Fabric was designed by parents for parents to help you get a high-quality, surprisingly affordable term life insurance policy in less than 10 minutes. Fabric has flexible policies that fit your family and your budget, with quality policies like $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. Get your personalized quote in just minutes and then apply when it's convenient for you. It's all online and on your schedule. You can go from start to covered in less than 10 minutes with no health exam required. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/fantasy. That's meetfabric.com/fantasy, meetfabric.com/fantasy. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. All right, the Indianapolis Colts and the Philadelphia Eagles. I know we had hoped to see Anthony Richardson versus Justin Fields last week. We got neither. This week, it would be fun to see Anthony Richardson versus Jalen Hurts, especially considering the Shane Steichen connection there. We should at least be getting Anthony Richardson from what I've heard, but not overly optimistic that we'll see Jalen Hurts and company. So, Kate, what are you hoping to see in this one?
It's definitely it's a challenge for me to figure out what kind of storyline, because it feels like there's a lot of things up in the air for both teams. I think the most meaningful, though, I'm going to come back to this Eagles running back situation, which it still feels like this could be Kenneth Gainwell's job to lose at this
Mhm.
point. We're still drafting DeAndre Swift as that top running back in this respective offense. Seeing some movement in terms of underdog ADP. Kenneth Gainwell definitely making a big jump over that draft board over the last couple of weeks. But is there really a chance that Rashad Penny does not make this roster? And because it feels wrong. It feels wrong. And I think there is a genuine belief that, on my end, that Rashad Penny is the most talented running back on this roster when healthy. And again, that's been a big what if. But um, let's say we see in week 3 of the preseason that this is Kenneth Gainwell's job, and it is very clear at this point. How high do you draft the lead running back for one of the league's most productive rushing offenses? Because I think the answer might be earlier than we want to admit based on the name value of Kenneth Gainwell.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. I think Kenneth Gainwell, oh man, I'm trying to think like what other players I'd be considering around him, like if he became that clear number one starter. And it's probably similar to maybe like the Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson share in Washington, right? Where we can expect Antonio
Yeah.
Gibson maybe to get most of the receiving down work. Same thing with DeAndre Swift in Philadelphia. And then Kenneth Gainwell and Brian Robinson being those kind of early down guys, right? And potentially getting work at the goal line as well. So I think that's more round 10-ish kind of area. So there's still, a lot of mouths to feed in that Eagles offense. And we don't know for sure that he's going to be able to hold this role down for an entire year, especially if Rashad Penny does stay on the team, right? I think, like you said, I think there's a chance that Rashad Penny doesn't make the roster this year if we continue to see that usage from last week. But like Nate pointed out, on Monday's episode, he mentioned that Penny was in the game later than the starters, but he only stayed in for a short amount of time, which might indicate that his roster spot is safe. But I don't know. It's so hard to figure out, and you would think that he'd be the clear number one. So for him to be this far down the depth chart, I think that's concerning.
Yeah, it just still feels kind of like a mishmash. And right now, looking at the ADPs for the running backs in this backfield, DeAndre Swift leading the pack, RB31. Then we have Rashad Penny being drafted as the RB2, and then that's at running back 40, and then Kenneth Gainwell's all the way down the board at running back 50. I just think we're going to continue to see that climb, but don't be surprised if he does lead the pack this year. And I do think that comp of Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson, who are interestingly being drafted back to back right now, right around that like round 9, round 10 mark. I feel like that seems about right for what we're going to see in terms of the mishmash of rotation of snaps on any given week. But I have a feeling that none of these, I feel like everybody is looking at this, the playmakers in this backfield as having potential to do much more, because there is a lot of talent here. And I feel like we're not going to see all 3 of these running backs fall past the 10th round. And that seems to be the point that I think it would be reasonable to buy into this upside given the crowded room here. So I have a feeling I'm not going to end up with any of these guys on my roster, just given the fact that what is this backfield going to mean for me? Like outside of a best ball setting where I don't have to set a lineup, I don't know what you're going to have to expect on a week to week basis. And I think that honestly, from an NFL perspective, from a game planning perspective, that's a great thing to have in the arsenal with one of the most dynamic rushing offenses in the league. Like the Eagles probably don't want us to have a clue as to how they're going to deploy these running backs on a week to week basis, because they're all a bit different, and they're going to be hard to game plan for if you don't know exactly what's coming.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you know what? Let's add another wrinkle to it, and we'll spend a little bit more time on this game because there's other games that we don't have to. But they're playing the Colts. There's been rumors that the Eagles have called Indianapolis about Jonathan Taylor, right? He's been granted permission to seek a trade this week, which is interesting. We'll see if anything actually happens there. But we talked about this last on Monday as well, or last episode, whatever it was. We talked about this being maybe one of the better landing spots for him. So maybe we could see these two GMs kind of link up and have like an in-person conversation during this game to potentially get a deal done. Maybe they ship a Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott, or Rashad Penny back in return to help that Colts running back room. And they go after Jonathan Taylor here. I think if a deal does come with the Eagles, this is a pretty good spot for it to happen as these two teams play each other this Thursday night.
I'd love to see this happen like in live time. If we could get like
Yeah.
a mic'd up GM edition on the sideline,
Oh yeah.
watch these two duke it out. Winner gets Jonathan Taylor. I think it could be fun. And imagine if they got this deal done and they send Rashad Penny to the Colts. He would fly up my draft board so quickly. But like pending the way that this situation works out, I have to imagine that the Colts would be looking to acquire a depth piece at running back in exchange for Jonathan Taylor, just given their current situation. But I keep going back to the thought of Zach Moss. And that's kind of been my brand for the last several years, is me continually going back to the Zach Moss well. Is there a chance? So like broken arm, which was super unfortunate given the opportunity that Zach Moss had. But he seemed like last season, with closing out the year, especially on fantasy teams, like there was a question mark as to how they were going to deploy these running backs in the absence of Jonathan Taylor. And it was Zach Moss, and it felt like it was his like backup role to lose. It's a broken arm. It's not like a lower body injury, which is a good thing because I think that helps in terms of keeping conditioning and like you're going to feel a little bit better about that rehab process from the standpoint of a running back. If he can keep his legs well conditioned. Is there a chance that Zach Moss ends up being a hero again?
I think there is. I mean, look at the other options on the roster right now. It's Deion Jackson and it's Evan Hall. These guys are not, proven every down starters by any means. And, to an extent, Zach Moss isn't as well, but we've seen him be utilized a little bit closer to that role than we have like for Jackson and for Hall, at least. Hall being a rookie. So obviously we haven't seen him there, but yeah, I'm with you. I think there's absolutely a chance, and that if he can get back sooner rather than later, there's still time, obviously, to heal from that broken arm. We still got a couple weeks before week one. Even if it isn't week one, if he can, still find a way in there, that could be a really nice pickup and somebody that is basically not being drafted at all right now, right? Nobody's really looking at Zach Moss. So he could be one of those sneaky plays. And yeah, we'll see. This is such an interesting situation.
I'm just saying 20%, 27% missed forced tackle rate last season, ranked 15th among all players in the NFL,
Wow.
any position. 4.8 yards per attempt, which like you're going to take that all day especially after what you saw in Buffalo. 11 explosive runs, which for a guy that barely saw the field, you're gonna be very happy about that. And yeah, call me crazy, I might be crazy, but I don't know.
There's potential there. I'm with you on this one because look, he's never graded poorly in our system either as a running back. He's always been up over in the 70s range. He had like a career best last year as far as yards after contact per attempt as well. It was like over 3, which is a really strong number. So there's potential for him there as a runner. Like, he's a former day 2 draft pick too, right? So the NFL believed in him at the time. He's still only 25 years old, I want to say.
Tough
25.
runner, like
Yeah.
really, really tough runner, and like never shied away from contact. But
Yeah.
like you mentioned, has never graded poorly. Like it really has felt like an opportunity, a lack of opportunity. He's one of these runners that like I think very much a rhythm runner, and like very much a very much a type of runner that like needs to get volume, and you see him sort of wear down opposing defenses as he continues to get carries. And that's something that he just never had the opportunity to do in Buffalo, the way that they, would um, rotate drives and get Devin Singletary so involved.
Mhm.
Don't be surprised if I use my last round pick on Zach Moss in every single one of my fantasy leagues.
Nice.
I I'm ready to get hurt again.
Look, you've convinced me. I'm gonna go out. I'll start adding some Zach Moss waiver wire claims in some of my
There we
deeper leagues for
go.
sure. So
That's all
you've
I
convinced
ask.
me. Let's do it. Why not? Let's spend basically nothing to get him and hope that it pays off here.
Yes.
All right, let's move to the Friday games now and start with the Detroit Lions and the Carolina Panthers. This one, not as interesting. I mean, maybe the Lions play their starters. We didn't get any Jared Goff or Jameer Gibbs or Sam Laporta last week, so maybe they had the week off because they're going to play this week. I don't think we'll see Jamison Williams. Obviously, he's dealing with the injury. Amon-Ra St. Brown had a minor injury as well that kept him kind of sidelined a little bit. I doubt they risk him in this game. Panthers, the receiving options, we talked about it last week. So between the Lions and the Panthers here, anything that stands out to you that you'd want to see?
I think just overall from the Detroit Lions, right? Like last week's preseason game was just absolutely brutal. Like this team could not get anything going. And I do think that this is kind of an unfortunate position for the Lions with these injuries, with JMO out, with I think they're kind of at a disadvantage. I mean, you look at what they produced last week. Um, just 9 total first downs, 131 total yards in this game, 2.6 yards per play. Like this team could not get anything going, and not looking as good for this depth on this roster. And I think not having their starters out there might be at a disadvantage for the kind of rhythm this team gets off to start the season. You're playing the Kansas City Chiefs in week 1. Like
Yeah.
I think this is a moment where Dan Campbell needs to get as many of his starters out there, and maybe not take for granted this offseason narrative that like the Lions are the new team to beat. Um and like get your starters some reps, because you're like, for you to go out there in week 1 to knock the rust off against the Kansas City Chiefs, not exactly ideal for this season where you're favored to take the NFC North. Like I'm really hoping to see more starters than we'd expect in this game. And I think I'm not an NFL coach, but I feel like it'd be something pretty smart, because I know it's the preseason, so it's so hard to actually take any of that seriously, but it was like alarmingly bad.
Yeah. And yeah, like you said, playing the Chiefs in week 1 on Thursday night in prime time is not a recipe for success for any team. So I'm with you. I think it would be very nice to see the starters here show something. Otherwise, man, I have visions of Travis Kelce burning Alex Anzalone for 40-yard touchdowns over and over and over again.
It's they're 6.5 point underdogs, and I'm like, again, this might just be me being a little biased here, but if they don't get starters in the mix here and they don't look good,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be smashing
Oh yeah.
that Chiefs point spread for them to cover in week 1 without a question, because uh, yikes.
Yeah, yeah.
Just big yikes.
Yeah, there's still questions for sure. And yeah, maybe they get better, but week 1, man, that's gonna be a really tough one. Panthers, look, we talked about it last week. Basically, it's the kind of same things. We're not looking too much, Bryce Young again, just small sample size. Hayden Hurst, who you mentioned the potential to lead this Panthers receiving core in targets this season. Last week, you mentioned that. And look, he played every snap with Bryce Young and the starters there. So off to a very good start there. So would like to see that obviously continue with for him. And yeah, I'm with you. I think that could be an interesting one as well.
Yeah, DJ Chark suffered a hamstring injury earlier
Yeah.
this week. Have seen some sort of mixed reports, like doesn't look good. But regardless, like there's definitely a risk for recurrence with hamstring injuries. We see that time in and time out, time in, time out. I don't know what I'm trying to say. But we see a relatively high injury recurrence rate with hamstrings, and they can linger. If they're not managed properly, if they're not, brought back into rotation in just the right way, that could be something that nags, and they've got to target somebody,
Yeah.
John. They got to target somebody, and Hayden Hurst might just be one of the better options that they actually have right now. And I think we definitely could see a true breakout season from Hayden Hurst as a receiver.
Nice. I like it. Yeah. Yeah. Chark probably would be his biggest threat for targets on that team. Now, maybe it's Adam Thielen or Jonathan Mingo, not guys that you're overly concerned about, especially as a rookie and a very old veteran there. Right. So I like the potential for Hurst in this offense as well. Let's head to the next game on this Friday slate, the New England Patriots and the Tennessee Titans, where it is Bill Belichick and his former player turned coach, Mike Vrabel, facing off in this one where who knows if they give us anything, but at least for me, I have my fingers crossed that we get like some kind of hint on how the Patriots will use Ramondre Stevenson and Ezekiel Elliott together. We have some idea, sure. We could assume that Zeke is going to take some of the short yardage work and stuff like that, but it would be nice to actually get to see it in action prior to week 1.
It would be nice to see, but I feel like that's like Bill Belichick does not care about our fantasy teams. And let's be honest, this has always been the game he's played in terms of making not just fantasy managers, but opposing defenses second guess the way he's going to deploy these running backs on any given week. And I mean, if past precedent is a thing, like, what we see out of the gate might not even be what we see in week 2, week 3. Like, I would not be surprised if Bill Belichick has some sort of, maybe not a definitive plan here, but if we see variable usage from a week to week basis, just, keep the defenses on their toes here. I feel like we're not going to learn too much here, but on the Titans side of the ball, Treylon Burks still, managing this knee injury. There could be potential for the Chigakonkwo resurgence, because DeAndre Hopkins put a damper on that, but it seems like is this happening? Is this happening?
Yeah, we talked about it on Monday, I guess it was, and yeah, I'm excited. I'm more optimistic about Okonkwo now than I was immediately after the DeAndre Hopkins signing, right? Because there was always the question about his usage and how often he was going to play offensive snaps and in certain personnels and things like that. And this was already, not a pass heavy team, so Hopkins coming in and taking a lot of those targets would hurt him, but we did see him play 100% of snaps in 11 personnel last week. We saw a slight decrease, I think it was in 12 we talked about, but 11 personnel that's more of your passing down work. So we want to see him more involved there. And that was obviously a big jump from last year where he was barely involved at all in 11. So seeing him being utilized more as that receiving tight end, I think is a big boost for his fantasy value and continues to be another nice sleeper tight end for this offseason.
Yeah, we saw, earlier in this offseason was drafted, like tight end 10, tight end 11. And slowly we've started to see him dip right now, being drafted on average tight end 16 on ESPN fantasy. So I think there's a lot of room, especially if he hangs around that like tight end 14 to 16 range. there's a lot of room for upside there, especially in the late rounds. If you're punting the tight end position, the things you're going to look for are a tight end who's available on the field. You mentioned that usage on 11 personnel, like that's a huge key. A lot of his like sticky metrics from his rookie season were absolutely through the roof. He was a very efficient player. And you're going to look for opportunities for targets. So obviously, keeping a close eye on that rehab process for Treylon Burks could be key to him getting off to a really, really hot start if the opportunity presents itself here in 2023.
Yeah, I love it. It's exciting stuff. And yeah, like you said, Okonkwo just was unreal last year as far as efficiency goes and on things that on numbers metrics that matter as well, that sticks year to year. So we love to see that. Hope that he gets a bigger role this year and it could pay off big time. All right. The super late Friday game between the Chargers and the 49ers. Kate, is there going to be anything to tune into to make it worth watching at like 10 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow night between these two teams?
It's gotta be the Trey Lance
Oh,
shenanigans,
I
right?
know.
So first of all, I just gotta say, man, like this situation truly just absolutely sucks.
Yeah.
Trey Lance and the opportunity or lack of opportunity that he saw with this 49ers offense. I think this is now that Kyle Shanahan has come out to say that Sam Darnold has won the QB2 job. Had that conversation with Trey Lance. It seems like they are open to exploring trade options for him. This is, I think, going to be an interesting opportunity for them to show off a little bit of Trey Lance and what makes him special, in hopes that they're going to recoup something back in a trade, and get Trey Lance the opportunity that he's really wanted. Is there any landing spot here that if Trey Lance were to be traded, that you would be willing to utilize your, let's say, last round pick, if maybe you reached on Zach Moss around earlier, you're willing to reach use your last pick on Trey Lance just in case, because I have one team in mind that
Okay.
I might be willing to consider the upside for fantasy even here in 2023. But I'm curious as to if give me one team.
Sure. So yeah, so the one, I think if I had one team that he can go to for 2023 value specifically, I'd probably say the Arizona Cardinals. Basically because Kyler
Mm.
Murray is on IR. We don't know when he's going to get back. Colt McCoy, we know what he is. Unfortunately, Clayton Tune hasn't, impressed in the preseason so far the way that I had hoped he would. So if Trey Lance could go to the Arizona Cardinals, maybe they just keep Kyler Murray, on IR for the rest of the season. There's opportunity there and could be a fun offense for him because they've utilized a running quarterback before. So that would be the one that kind of stands out to me initially.
That's a very interesting point, and you do like you very interesting point on the mobility standpoint, because I hadn't even considered that. Trey Lance might kind of fit into, um, you know, definitely not the kind of passer that Kyler Murray is, but having that skill set of mobility could
Mm-hmm.
definitely be a nice sort of complement to what the kind of offense they're already working in. My idea, and this is a role that I think could still be up for grabs in the right situation. What about the starting quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Because
Yeah, that
Trey
was
Lance, I do think Trey Lance could come in and win that position over Baker Mayfield. I know they declared him the starter, but it very much felt like a situation where Baker Mayfield didn't win the job, just like Kyle Trask lost it harder. Like that
yeah.
is how the Buccaneers felt. But so imagine Trey Lance goes to the Tampa Bay Bucks, is immediately out of the gate throwing to Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. That's not a bad situation. And like, in terms of offensive systems, maybe that Kyle Shanahan system wasn't great. You need to get him out of that system. And um I mean, like if you're gonna get reps in on an NFL team, you might as well get them throwing to two wide receivers like Chris Godwin and Mike Evans.
Yeah, that was the other team that came to mind, and I think it makes a ton of sense, right? Like the Bucks still have a lot of the players in place that they had just won a Super Bowl with 2 years ago, right? Like you said, Godwin, Mike Evans. I mean, even on defense with Levante David, Devin White, and Antoine Winfield, and those guys. Like, there's a lot of good players that can compete and give them a chance to play and potentially even win that division. It's not like the toughest division in
Yeah.
football either, right? So if they figure like Trey Lance has the upside to potentially give them a shot, I mean, that would be a lot of fun. I would definitely be spending probably more than a late round pick on either of those landing spots, just
I
for the
want
potential for Trey Lance.
this is what I'm rooting for. So Arizona Cardinals don't have a shot at winning their division. I do think the Bucks could if
Yeah.
things went uh a little sideways. I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility. So now what I'm rooting for is for Trey Lance to get traded to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then he suddenly rallies and takes that team to Super Bowl 58. Imagine the world where it
Yeah.
happened. But on the way, he takes you to your fantasy championships with that mobility, with the upside of throwing to, one of the best receiving duos in the league. I think I don't know. Call me Miss Cleo. I want to make it happen. Let me know, like 49ers, what I can do to help facilitate this trade. Because I think it'd be really fun to watch, and I think it'd be probably kind of pretty fruitful for fantasy if we're
Oh yeah.
being all that honest.
Yeah, I love it. And add in beating the 49ers on the way to a Super Bowl
Oh
in there as
man.
well, because I mean, he just didn't get the fair shot that he probably
Mm-mm.
deserved, especially after the investment that they made into him. So yeah, definitely rooting for him. Obviously, Tampa Bay would be a really fun landing spot. So we'll see if anything actually comes of a trade, what they are expecting in return. I would hope they're not asking for that much because of what they paid. That was their choice. So it's a interesting situation to watch. So yeah, hopefully we get a nice showcase of Trey Lance on Friday night. All right, let's go. Let's do one quick ad read, and that is our friends at DraftKings. This season, DraftKings has launched the largest best ball tournament in DraftKings history. Right now, you can enter into DraftKings Best Ball Tournament for a shot at over $10 million in guaranteed cash prizes. Make your entry into the draft today, sit back, relax, and enjoy the NFL season without having to worry about managing your roster, waiver wires, and more. To start playing best ball, download the DraftKings app using code PFF, enter DraftKings Best Ball Millionaire Contest, and snake draft your team for the season. Each week, you'll automatically rack up points from all your top scorers. No ads, drops, trades, or I should have played him instead. Teams with the most points by the end of the season will have a shot to take home the $1 million top prize. So what are you waiting for? Head to the DraftKings app and sign up with code PFF and start playing best ball today. Join the DraftKings $10 million best ball tournament only on DraftKings with code PFF. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. All right, Saturday is full of options for us to watch now. It starts with 5 games at 1 p.m. So let's start with the Arizona Cardinals and the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota didn't give us much last week. We'll see if they do here, but this one feels like one of those depth games, like you mentioned. Looking at trying to figure out where the backups stand in on the rosters. But yeah, how about you? What's your sense in this one?
Yeah, I'm not all that eager. I think for what it's worth, like I'm not sure that the depth on either of these teams is going to mean all that much for
Mm-hmm.
fantasy. At least barring any significant injuries. Michael Wilson probably the more interesting thing to watch, but I'm, it again mentioning some of those players that climbed in ADP. Talked about Michael Wilson on an article with PFF this week. He's starting to climb up draft boards a little bit once we saw that he got the start alongside Marquise Brown with the ones. And I gotta say, I'm very skeptical that even a starting role with this offense, I think there's a very reasonable question about the scoring potential of this team, whether or not we're going to see Murray if and when, um, this is a guy that's generally like struggled with health, hasn't played a ton over the past 3 seasons, just 14 total games over the last 3 seasons. Like I think there's a lot of upside here, but for me, looking at Michael Wilson, definitely more of a dynasty play than he is, in terms of redraft upside. You have Zach Ertz cleared to play. You've got Trey McBride, who's been pretty involved, led the team last week in routes run. So interested to see Michael Wilson because I do think another start, if he gets a target, and actually sees some involvement there, might start to continue to see that ADP climb, but I'm not buying in. So this is more of a me watching out to see, is there a chance that one of my league mates buys into the Michael Wilson hype this year with one of their last round picks while I'm drafting Zach Moss and I can ride off in the sunset happy.
There you go. Perfect. Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm not overly interested in the Cardinals receiving weapons, even down to Zach Ertz and Trey McBride. I mean, it's Marquise Hollywood Brown, sure, and James Conner. Basically, those are the two Cardinals players that I'm interested in drafting. If you have IR spots, you can draft Kyler Murray late as well, but not a very good team. This is a team that is likely playing for the number one overall pick. And then Minnesota, again, nothing too exciting here. We kind of know who the starters are on this offense. We're still trying to see, who the RB2 is, but it very much feels like it's Ty Chandler there. So nothing really to spend too much time on, I wouldn't think, for Minnesota. So we could probably just move on to Buffalo, Chicago.
Yeah, that sounds like a more interesting game. I think on both sides of the ball there.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, we didn't get Justin Fields last week, unfortunately, but maybe Chicago treats this game as that kind of dress rehearsal now. So we saw more of the Bills starters last week. So I do wonder if they maybe get the day off or not in this one. But like you said, some interesting things to kind of keep an eye out here. What's at the top of your list in this game?
I think I want to continue to watch the Dalton Kincaid usage.
Mm-hmm.
I still worry that he might be a little bit of a trap pick, but Dawson Knox dealing with like a finger injury, I believe, is why he was sitting out there. Just given the usage we've seen so far, the route participation should be, I think, a player to continue to watch, especially if Knox isn't fully healthy. I don't know like the severity of this finger injury, but obviously, uh, you know, hand injuries, finger injuries, those impede the catch process, which can be detrimental to your ability to contribute, especially in the red zone. I think that was my biggest kind of concern with Dalton Kincaid, was that potential for Knox in the red zone. But definitely just want to keep, this situation specifically at the forefront, because I do think there maybe is a little bit more upside for Dalton Kincaid. I'm warming up to it as we get closer to the season.
Yeah, for sure. That's number one for me in this game as well, just because we didn't get to see Dawson Knox play last week. And it was nice, encouraging usage for Dalton Kincaid, 67% route participation. He lined up almost exclusively as a receiver on those passing plays as well, which they had talked about how they wanted to use him. So yeah, it would be nice to see Dawson Knox in there as well, to see how the usage shakes out between the two of them, even if it is for just a drive or two, just to kind of give us a sense of maybe what to expect for week one. But other than that, I mean, this game we've now seen James Cook, the running back for the Buffalo Bills, kind of solidify his spot as the clear RB1 on that team, and the ADP has started to rise for him as well. He's moved up more than 6 spots on Underdog in the last week. He's up to RB24 there. Interestingly, he's still like the consensus RB30 in redraft. So potentially somebody that's also kind of getting slept on in maybe more casual type leagues, that you could take advantage of there. James Cook potentially has a lot more upside than that. So, and then Chicago, hopefully Justin Fields. If not, I'd understand. But yeah, Khalil Herbert and company are also in play here. But we kind of have a sense that Khalil Herbert's now the number one running back in Chicago. But yeah, that just a kind of a quick thing look at it. But how about you? Anything else for Chicago?
No, I
Yeah.
think maybe keeping an eye on like the rotation behind Khalil Herbert if he were to
Mhm.
start, but still right now Khalil Herbert looking like one of the best values in the draft,
Yeah.
RB32 right now. We are starting to see that ADP climb. He's climbed 16 spots over the last week on ESPN Fantasy. So starting to see that movement upward. How high it gets, I don't know,
Mhm.
but it still feels like, I don't think we're going to suddenly see him climb into the top 15. So like it feels like regardless of where his ADP ends up landing officially in, at the point of your biggest draft weekends, like Khalil Herbert still feels like he's going to be one of the best values in fantasy football this year. Just across the board, like, from, efficiency and ability to generate yards after contact, like this is going to be a runner, I think, that continues to benefit from the system they have in place with such a proficient rushing quarterback.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm kind of looking at it similarly to to Baltimore and Lamar Jackson, and how those running backs benefit from that system, and defenses honing in on Lamar Jackson being such a weapon. And Khalil Herbert's been super efficient, like you said, and he's been a very good running back in the NFL so far. He just hasn't had that every down opportunity. So with that role, I mean, you said maybe he doesn't, get drafted within the top 15, but he could have that potential on any given week, if that usage shakes out in the right direction for him. So definitely somebody that could be a very strong value here in drafts. All right, let's go to the Bengals and the Commanders. The Washingtons, they gave us I think plenty to be excited about on Monday night against the Ravens. They ended the Ravens preseason win streak. Jahan Dotson was a star. We got some fun running back usage. Terry McLaurin gave us a scare with his toe injury. And most importantly, Sam Howell moving the odds for regular season MVP as the new betting favorite. Kate, what are you watching for in this game, and why is it Sam Howell?
Somehow I honestly was just like my jaw was on the floor just watching that whole game. He just looks so comfortable and
Yeah.
so confident, and he looks like a QB1. Now, like I feel like that's all I've talked about in the last like couple of months, as it's sort of been more clear that Sam Howell is going to be the guy to win the job. But like it's really hard not to buy into Sam Howell, the potential that he has as a rushing quarterback. Through the preseason so far, was named the starting quarterback. He looks decisive, has a 81.6 PFF passing grade from a clean pocket, which, you know, fantastic. Leads all quarterbacks on those throws with a 134.8 passer rating. He looks willing to read the field and not just throw it to his first read. Like he's making good decisions. And I think the rushing floor that we've seen from him historically, coming out of UNC, like this is going to make him fantasy relevant, whether we like it or not. And I like it. So
Yeah.
smash accept. Right now have him rated QB 14, um, which I feel like feels too high, but it's hard. You look at the weapons of Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, um, you know, the usage of Antonio Gibson as a receiver finally, the rushing upside. Like it feels like they're creating a perfect storm under Eric Bieniemy to really have a breakout season. I'm so excited
Mhm.
for Sam Howell.
Yeah, me too. I wrote him up as a breakout this off season. I wrote him up again after the preseason as a sleeper. He's still getting drafted outside the top 24 quarterbacks. I've moved him up to QB 19, so just behind Jared Goff and ahead of Derek Carr. I think he could potentially move up even further for me as well. It's just there's so much to like there, right? Like you said, there's offensive weapons that are going to be able to add for him with after the catch and get open for him, provide easy completions. He has a decent arm too. We saw the throw that he made in week 18 to Terry McLaurin down the sideline was gorgeous. So the rushing upside being one of the main things. If this is a guy that's going to rush the ball maybe 7 times a game or so between scrambles and designed runs, which I don't think is out of the realm of possibilities, potentially even getting into the end zone on some of those too. There's a lot to like. And yeah, I'm with you. I'm very, very excited about Sam Howell. I actually kind of hope that he doesn't play in this game, just at the chance that we keep him safe and protected, and then we can get him in there in week 1. So we saw enough of him on Monday night, to be honest.
Yeah, I think we saw more than enough to feel
Yeah.
comfortable with his current draft price. I think the biggest other question we might need to answer is how much of a bump we might see Jahan Dotson get with the Terry
Mm-hmm.
McLaurin injury. It is a turf toe injury, which those can um, kind of nag, especially for a wide receiver that like that get off is so important and critical to the game. You know, TBD, it sounds like, he should be fine. But one of these players that could get off to a slower start than you might like. And Jahan Dotson definitely stands to benefit from some of those targets should he not be as available as we might like heading into this game.
Yeah, that's a good call. And yeah, Terry McLaurin, they said that I think they're hopeful for week 1. So that's at least a sign that it's not as serious, but there's potential, like you said, that he's maybe not up to full health. And we saw it right away in that game on Monday night, right? Terry McLaurin went down and they ran 7 straight pass plays, and 5 of them, the first 5 of them all went to Jahan Dotson. So he was targeted very heavily in that offense right away. Sam Howell immediately going to him after McLaurin was out of the game. So there's a potentially huge bump there for Jahan Dotson if McLaurin misses time or isn't fully healthy. All right, let's go to Cleveland and Kansas City. The Browns, they named Josh Dobbs their QB2 behind Deshaun Watson and not Dorian Thompson-Robinson, which is bizarre to me and could just be one of those vet things where DTR is still kind of acclimating to NFL playbooks, blah blah blah. Just not nearly as exciting for us to talk about, but it doesn't really matter anyway, since Deshaun Watson is the expected starter for week 1 and the season as a whole. So we had hoped to see him last week. Do you think we see him in this one?
No,
Yeah.
no, but I mean, maybe like from a standpoint, I don't know if the Chiefs defense is planning to play. Like that might be a an opportunity to get reps against, a solid defense. If you're the Browns and looking to get yourself in like, mid-season form, and get your starters, I think a good challenge. I think that would be really smart on the Browns, but I don't think there's a whole lot for me to watch. I feel like we kind of know what we're gonna get out of each of these teams, and there's not a lot of question marks left for me
Mm-hmm.
at this point in the off season, which is kind of refreshing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is nice for sure. And yeah, the Chiefs, I think they played their defensive starters in each of the preseason games. I don't know if they'll do it again, especially they're playing the first game of the season on the Thursday night. So maybe they want them to have as much rest as possible. Who knows? But I'm with you. I don't think there's too much here. Even the Chiefs wide receiver rotation that we mentioned last week, it was basically confirmed this past week, and I wouldn't expect that to change all that much. For this game anyways, even if the starters do play. So let's go to Seattle at Green Bay. The Fail Mary rematch game. So I don't know. Every time I see those two teams, that's what I think about. But let's see. What do
And
we got
boy,
here?
do these two teams look different, huh?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, just a little bit from what was that, like 2012, something like that. Slightly different. Yeah. Although
It's
Pete
a new
Carroll's still
era
there.
for both of these teams. Yeah, we're in a new era, and I mean, this is probably one of the like games I'm a little bit more excited to watch. I do hope that we continue to see some work from Jordan Love and that
Mhm.
starting offense there. Um Luke Musgrave, man, is there anybody that has received more hype this offseason that like would not be a common household name in maybe some of your home leagues right now, drafted on average tight end 25, not really seeing a whole ton of movement, but I feel like he could be one of the like low key whisper values in your home leagues that again you're not going to expect because he's a rookie tight end, but the Packers did not draft him to be a hybrid blocking receiving tight
Mhm.
end. I don't think this is he is a receiver in this
Yeah.
offense, and that is going to, I think, significantly ease the transition of some of these struggles that we see from rookie tight ends while they acclimate both to the route running portion and the blocking portion. We don't really have to probably worry with that with Luke Musgrave here. Probably like I don't want to say Dalton Kincaid light because he's not, but like in terms of drafting a rookie tight end that's immediately stepping into a primary role as a receiver, Luke Musgrave probably isn't going to go drafted. You could select him in the last round of your fantasy drafts, and I think there's a realistic shot that they actually score probably much closer than we have them projected at this point in the offseason.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I love Luke Musgrave. He's been one of my favorite players since even before the draft. So have got a lot of him in Dynasty, banking on him a lot. I didn't think it would be right away in year one, but with the usage that he's been getting and obviously the hype that he's been getting too, it's looking very good for him. So he got included in my sleeper article this week as well. So you could read about more why I like him there. But essentially, like you said, this is a guy that has a high-end receiving profile and now potentially steps into an offense where he could be, I think, the number two target in this entire offense, ahead of ahead of Aaron Jones, ahead of Romeo Doubs, and likely behind Christian Watson. But I'm all in on Luke Musgrave. I love the player, and I think this is a great value to be had, and I think it's even more encouraging that we've seen Jordan Love look good as well, right? I think that plays a big part in it because even if it's been a small sample size this preseason, 82.4 passing grade on just 19 dropbacks, but in previous years during the preseason, he didn't look good. We saw him get like a 58 passing grade, a 62 passing grade in there, more dropbacks, but also against more backups as well, right? So he's playing against players that are higher up on the depth chart on the defense now, as well as he starts the game. So I think it's encouraging. I'm very excited. I try to grab Luke Musgrave wherever I can.
Yeah, and like if I'm an NFL quarterback, making my transition into the league as a starter for the first time, you know what would be really great if you could just like in moments of doubt, chuck the ball up to a guy who's like 254 pounds, 6'6". Like
Yeah.
that sounds pretty nice to me. And I think like that size advantage just paired with his athletic profile and what he's able to do specifically in terms of the way that he moves for his size could be a really nice value. Like if you're punting the position, and my general philosophy is to do so, I'll take, maybe a couple of tight ends that have, in the last few rounds of my draft, and just hope one of them is a viable flex play on a week to week basis. And Luke Musgrave, I think, is like the perfect, you know, one of your last picks in the draft. Just take a shot and see if that might translate to something. Big hands, big frame, big plays,
Yeah.
perhaps.
I like it. I like that. Big hands, big frame, big place. That works
Yeah.
beautifully. That's
That
that's a
sounds
good
like a t-shirt. Can we
it is a
get
t-shirt. We're gonna get Luke Musgrave PFF Fantasy t-shirts made with that. That's I love it.
I'm not kidding, John. We're gonna be wearing in 2 weeks if we're not wearing matching t-shirts
Yep.
on the show. we've done something incredibly wrong. Yeah, we'll see what we can muster
yeah,
up here.
yeah, we'll get somebody on that for sure. We'll mention in the chats. All
Yes.
right, let's go to well, what are we going? Yeah, the Jets and the Giants, the Battle of New York / New Jersey, whatever it is. I'm trying to make these games maybe seem more important than they are. I don't know if it's working because this game, I don't know how much we're gonna see here. I mean, maybe Dalvin Cook, Brees Hall. That's maybe the main thing that I'm hoping for here. How about you?
Yeah, I think that's probably all you can hope for. Yeah, not a whole lot. There's things that I could ask for
Yeah.
in this game. I don't know that we're necessarily going to see them. Darren Waller, probably the other notable storyline here, has been targeted on 50% of routes run, which is he's one of just 3 tight ends to be hanging in that target range on routes run, which is a very encouraging sign. And very much matches what we've seen, in terms of commentary throughout training camp and, um, you know, OT. Like this is exactly what we've heard all along, is that Daniel Jones only has eyes for Darren Waller. And I think I want to keep seeing that, but I feel like even if we don't, I've already seen enough. And
Yeah.
Darren Waller, comparative to the other top end tight ends, like is starting to look at like as like a league winning value. Cause
Mhm.
Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, you're gonna have to use a top 3 round pick on either of these tight ends. But I think there's uh, you know a lot of value Waller in the 5th or 6th round that I think has similar upside to these other elite tight ends.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, we've seen it. We got a sense now that he's going to be that main target in the Giants offense. So honestly, wrap him in bubble wrap, put him away until week 1 and just keep him healthy for the year because yeah, I'm with you. I think he could be the guy to lead this Giants team in targets and be a massive fantasy star for us as long as he can stay healthy, which is obviously the main thing. So
Yeah, for sure.
all right, let's do one more ad break here. And this is our next partner, which is AG1, the daily foundational nutrition supplement that supports whole body health. Personally, I've been drinking it pretty much every day, and I certainly need it because, look, if I'm being totally honest here, I don't necessarily have the healthiest possible diet that I stick to. And quite frankly, could definitely stand to be healthier in general. So AG1 is essentially exactly what I was looking for, as something quick and easy that I could build into my diet where I don't have to worry about taking so many supplements and pills and all of that fun stuff. I wanted a single solution that supports my entire body and covers my nutritional bases every day. I wanted better gut health, a boost in energy, immune system support, and wanted a supplement that actually tastes great. I throw my AG1 into a fruit smoothie every morning and start the day off with everything I need for my body, like I'm giving my body the nutrition it craves. So, again, as someone who can't be alone in wanting to improve their health and has a difficult time doing so when it comes to overall diet, adding AG1 to my day has been a game changer in that regard. I get 75 high quality ingredients that give me my daily key nutrients and support energy, focus, strength, and clarity. I just mix one small scoop with my smoothie, drink it first thing in the morning, done, simple as that. Another added bonus is that it costs less than $3 a day, which is pretty good if you ask me. It's a relatively effective daily habit with high quality sourced ingredients. It's a win-win. So if a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/PFF. That's drinkag1.com/PFF. You can check it out now. All right, moving on to our last stretch of games here. It is the battle for Florida supremacy. Sorry, Tampa Bay. It's Miami at Jacksonville. This is another one. We've kind of got a sense of most of the things that we're looking for this preseason, but anything remaining that stands out to you that you'd want to see in this one?
Um, Devin A. Chain, I think, is an interesting case, right? Because it didn't play until the 4th drive in the second preseason game. was kind of surprised by that, just given the fact that like he just suffered the shoulder injury and it didn't look great. So seeing him, um, you know, play further down the depth chart, just given that situation, was kind of a surprise to me.
Mhm.
Um, it's looking more and more obvious that like Raheem Mostert could be a very interesting value again in fantasy if they don't make a move to trade for Jonathan Taylor. Raheem Mostert, led the backfield last year. I know it wasn't like a super exciting like 10 years of fantasy manager, but right now Raheem Mostert being drafted on average is RB 45. That's in a similar range as like Jalen Warren, Tank Bigsby, Elijah Mitchell. Like all of these are backup running backs, and Raheem Mostert has a real chance to I think once again lead this backfield, being drafted behind Jeff Wilson Jr. Um, I just keep going back to the well on Raheem Mostert. I know Devin A. Chain is the guy everybody wants to see because he's super fast, and I think was a solid pick by the Dolphins, but you know he is smaller, already had that shoulder injury. I not sure when we're going to see him start to climb up the depth chart. I kind of thought week 1 might have been one of those like more fluky things where they're just kind of like, he's the rookie, earn your stripes. And then it felt like we didn't see a ton of movement there, after week 1 of the preseason, after this shoulder injury, which just kind of surprised me.
Yeah. Yeah, this is not overly encouraging for A Chain, and maybe it's one of those situations where we see him emerge like later in the season, right? Maybe post bye or something like that. I think they're a week 10 by Miami, so maybe we see A Chain after that get a larger role in the offense. But it very much feels like, yeah, this is Raheem Mostert, potentially Jeff Wilson going to be the lead backs here. It's not the greatest running back situation for fantasy purposes, right? They weren't a very run heavy team last year, and that the opportunities aren't as much as you would like for a fantasy running back. But like you said, the cost for this guy Raheem Mostert specifically, going RB 40ish in that range is a nice value and worth the shot here. If he's going to be the guy that starts and gets the bulk of the carries, that's definitely a nice value to take advantage of.
Yeah, again, it's not going to be like you're not going to be probably super happy on a week to week basis, but
Yeah.
I mean, Raheem Mostert with his speed, like they're in knowing the number of offenses or the number of offensive weapons that this team has, that does do the run game a little bit of a favor when you can create some open lanes, and you've got to pay very close attention to these two very fast wide receivers, can create some open space there for Raheem Mostert, who in and of itself very fast, and has that breakaway run potential really on any given play as long as he's healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a great one of those kind of like zero running back targets too, right? Like
Yeah.
where if you drafted running backs earlier, you're probably not starting him over them, but if you punted the position, he's a great option there as somebody that could be the lead back in that offense. So Jacksonville, not too much. Tank Bigsby again has kind of been the storyline, but we didn't see Travis Etienne last week, so maybe there's a chance we get both of them this week, but nothing overly exciting there, I don't think.
Yeah, not too crazy hyped on this game in particular for
Yeah.
our fantasy takeaways.
Fair. How about this next game with the Baltimore Ravens at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? I don't have anything. The Ravens going back to where they won the Super Bowl in 2001. That's maybe the only thing I could think of off the top of my head, to make this more interesting. But let's see. Look, I think ideally we talked about it last week. We maybe get at least some sample of what the Ravens wide receivers could be. Odell Beckham, Rashad Bateman, and Zay Flowers, if they're all on the field together. We didn't get Odell Beckham or Rashad Bateman last week. Flowers himself only played like 6 snaps, but he looked really great. Obviously scored that touchdown as well. So could we see them all on the field at the same time this week, I don't know, but ideally that would be maybe the thing that I'm looking for the most.
Yeah, just to see like what the rotation looks like, what the personnel usage looks like when all three of these guys are on the field. But I don't think we'll see it. And then like conversely on the Buck side, like not a whole ton I think we need to look at here in terms of um what we actually might have the potential to see based on I'm just not overly interested in this game because I do feel like I feel like the chances are low that we'll actually get to see all three of these receivers for the Ravens. So this game I'll say is lower on my priority list for the week.
Yeah, I'm with you. Let's move on from that one because yeah, I don't think there's much of interest there. Let's go to the Las Vegas Raiders at the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah, I don't know. The most expensive stadiums in the league or something, but
That's all we have,
yeah,
folks.
that's it. Yeah, it's I think the question that everybody's asking is going to be, is Aiden O'Connell better than Jimmy G? But probably not. But what else is there to talk about in this game? But that. So this could be another one. What do you think? Is there anything that you like in this Raiders Cowboys game?
I feel like everybody wants to talk about Deuce Vaughn.
Mm,
I'm not buying it. I'm sorry.
yeah.
I want to root for Deuce Vaughn to be like the second smallest running back in NFL history to just blow it out of the water and win the RB2 position. I do think the RB2 position has a chance to mean something, just given that like we've seen an increase in the rush attempts for this team on a year-to-year basis each season we've seen with Mike McCarthy, and now he's gonna probably have a little bit more control over this offense. But I can't for as good as Deuce Vaughn looks, I just think the liability that he could pose in pass protection is going to keep him from earning that RB2 role. I think biggest takeaway for me, Jake Ferguson, second year tight end for the Cowboys, who I've been very closely eyeing throughout the offseason, has been targeted on 37.5% of his routes, which is tied with Chigakonkwo for the seventh highest target rate on routes run. Has looked really good in terms of just like his receiving ability, 90.6 PFF receiving grade this preseason. Ranked third among tight ends, was efficient last season as a rookie. Just kind of generally across the board. I think we might again be underestimating how much Dak Prescott will favor the tight end position. And it seems like he's kind of got this role in the bag, being drafted on average as tight end 26. Again, I feel like the theme of this podcast right now is tight end values. It feels like there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
potential here for some of these like lower tier tight ends to actually make a meaningful difference in your fantasy leagues. Like we talked about Luke Musgrave, Jake Ferguson, Hayden Hurst. Those are all being drafted 25th, 26th, and 28th, respectively. Yeah, it just feels like there's a lot of value here in the late rounds that I wouldn't make it mind taking a shot on any of these guys, but Jake Ferguson is probably my favorite of that bunch.
Yeah, that's a nice call because Ferguson, like you said, you're looking at punting the tight end position. He's another one that absolutely could be a nice value and emerge with a decent role in that offense. And we saw Dalton Schultz emerge as a weekly fantasy starter when he was with the team. I think there's room for Ferguson to potentially take over that role. And he was another one of those guys who last season, on a small sample size, was just really efficient with all of his opportunities. So give him a larger sample size, and I'm not saying he'll be as efficient on more snaps, but he's at least shown the talent that he can make plays in the NFL and be a legitimate receiving option. So there's absolutely room there for Jake Ferguson to be a weekly fantasy starter. So yeah, I'm with you. There's value at tight end this year late, and yeah, I kind of like it.
Yeah, since 2020, Dak Prescott ranks 6th among quarterbacks, 7.8 targets per game to the tight end
Hmm.
position. Like I don't think that the any of the other tight ends really in the mix, like Peyton Hendershot, Luke Schoonmaker. Like I don't think I'm gonna peg any of them for as large a receiving role as Jake Ferguson might see. Um, I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in. I'm in. Like I'm very positive today. Apparently, I am. I'm enjoying the value. I can't wait for every single one of these late round tight ends to crush my soul. Um,
One of
but
them will hit. One of them will hit.
one of them will hit. They have to hit. I think
Yeah.
it's Jake Ferguson.
Nice. I like it. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good call. And yeah, I think the biggest, maybe the only concern, I don't think it's the competition at tight end for him, maybe just more of like a rotation or anything. But I don't think anybody in there is going to overtake him as like the lead tight end, basically. But I do like Ferguson. So another good one there. I think we got what, 2 games left here. So let's rock through the Rams and the Broncos here. Rams, we know Sean McVay, they just they don't care to play their starters in the preseason games. So not much that we're going to see or expect to see from the Rams there. We did get to see Javonte Williams and Samaje Perine on Denver last week, which was interesting with Williams coming off the ACL. Samaje Perine got used exclusively on third downs over Williams, but Williams outsnapped Perine 12-5 on first and second downs. And then Perine got some of that short down and distance work at 3-1, at least in favor of him there. So I think that's the main thing that I kind of would hope to see is the splits between Javonte Williams and Samaje Perine, maybe more of a sample size of that short down and distance opportunities there, because I think Williams could emerge there, but he's also coming off a torn ACL and they may want to keep his workload smaller to start the year at least.
Yeah, I think, we might have seen him in preseason game too, like, shaking off a little bit of that, a little bit of that rust, and, kind of building back towards that confidence. I think generally speaking, I project Williams to be one of these guys that gets off to a slower start. Maybe we see more involvement from Perine early on in the season, but I do think that he's one of these guys we're going to continue to see his role grow, just throughout the season as we get, just more reps, more comfort, more trust in that knee to make cuts. And, like Javonte Williams, such an elusive running back. He's, I think, a guy that when healthy can miss forced tackles like better than anybody in the league. So, once he is, 100% trusting in his knee to make some of those cuts, could be, a league winner down the stretch, for realsies. Like we could see something special out of him. And man, I'm too positive today. I need I need a grumpy take because I think this is just time. It's time for the season to start,
Yeah.
John. I need the season.
It's a time of optimism. That's the beauty of the preseason and the off season. There's nothing but hype about players. So why not get in on that before the regular season crushes our soul? And yeah, Javonte Williams, absolutely. I mean, one of the best running backs in the league. He proved that already in his short time in the NFL when he's healthy. Still one of the most elusive backs coming out of college. That carried into the NFL as well. So I'm hopeful. I want to see him healthy, and I want to see him play an every down role without the likes of guys like Melvin Gordon or even Samaje Perine eating into his workload. And I think you're right. I think we could expect to see that a little bit earlier in the year, but Javonte Williams has a chance down the stretch to be that RB1 type player that we've always thought he could be. So all right, let's go one last game here. We'll see if we can get you unoptimistic about this one at all in any kind of way. But it's the Houston Texans at the New Orleans Saints. We didn't get Tank Dell last week, so that was a bummer. But maybe potentially we get him this week. We did see Robert Woods, Nico Collins, Noah Brown kind of get the start there at wide receiver for the Texans. John Mechie didn't factor in until later. That the Texans wide receivers were interesting to me, but is there anything else in this game that you think is worth talking about?
No, specifically, I think I would like to see if Tank Dell plays in this game. He did return to practice after experiencing that tightness yesterday, Wednesday. So Stands to reason, at least, this a later game on the slate. So potentially could see Tank Dell. If we do, then I'll definitely be anxious to see where in the rotation is there a chance that he gets that start after a really solid preseason game one. Team was cautious with him in week 2. But is there a chance that maybe he gets the start over a Robert Woods or a Nico Collins? If he is a bit healthier, we didn't get to see that rotation in week 1 because the starters sat there, but it could be an interesting opportunity to evaluate that situation once we get the starters and Tank Dell all on the field at the same time.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think at the very least he can surpass Noah Brown on the depth chart as soon as week 1. Obviously, he's got to be healthy. Maybe there's a chance that he plays in this game and kind of gets to showcase that talent and ability once again, because yeah, he looked electric in preseason week 1 there. So this isn't an impossible wide receiver depth chart for him to climb if he continues to play like that. So very exciting player, and definitely somebody that I'd want to see more of in the preseason, and for him to get healthy. But yeah, that's really about it for me in this game. I mean, Dameon Pierce, we talked about him on Monday. Getting those third down snaps, I thought was huge for his potential value for fantasy. We know that Rex Burkhead managed most of the third down and passing down work last season, but Dameon Pierce potentially could take that in 2023. So that was maybe the last thing in this one, because there's nothing really on New Orleans that I'm overly interested in.
I think that kind of sums it up for me.
Nice. I like it. Yeah, that's it. We went through another big slate of games there. Again, I'm sure less than half of it is going to end up being something that we actually get to see this week, or maybe we'll get lucky and we'll see all of it. Who knows? That's why we tune in. But that is going to do it for another episode of the PFF Fantasy Podcast. We hope, again, that we get to see this stuff. We'll see. But hopefully we covered all our bases here and gave you, the good listeners, an idea of what will be important to keep an eye out for as we get this last week of preseason football done. And then Nate and I will be back on Monday to break down the key takeaways that we did get from these games. So, Kate, thank you so much for doing this again with me. I know you'll be back next week on Thursday as well. And since there won't be games to preview for that week, Nate is also going to join us, and we're going to do a big season preview, which should be a lot of fun. So looking forward to that. But in the meantime, for people who want to get more of your fantasy insight, and who doesn't, please remind the good folks where they could find you and what you have up on pff.com this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Give me a follow on Twitter or X at Kate Magdziuk. It's Magdziuk. You can hit that little rewind button if you need to hear it again. Check out my work over at PFF this week. Talked about some ADP risers. Whether or not I'm buying or selling their astronomical rises in ADP over the last week after week 2 of the preseason. So check that out. More to come, and I'm excited to join us again, with Nate, and really dive into the nitty-gritty of what to expect in this fantasy season, because it's going to be a goodie.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Definitely go check out Kate and her work. And as for me, I wrote up my 12 favorite sleepers to target late in drafts this week. I also wrote up safest draft pick by round for those of us who are maybe more risk averse and want a few safe production floor options to target. But then I also wrote up the top high risk, high reward fantasy options by rounds as well, for those of us that want to gamble on the upside a bit more. So make sure to check those out. Don't forget to subscribe to the PFF Fantasy YouTube channel and PFF Fantasy Discord. We greatly appreciate anyone who's able to support us in that way. It means a lot. Other than that, everyone enjoy their weekend and this last batch of preseason games before we get some real NFL football right around the corner. Thank you all for listening, and peace out.